Welcome into, I guess, what's the inaugural episode of Southland Shenanigans. I'm Josh Criswell, and I'm joined right now by my co-host, David Berry, who's in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm in Houston at the moment, in between Houston and Huntsville, while all of this COVID-19 craziness is going on. But I guess first things first, let's introduce the fans to the show. David, why are we calling this thing Southland Shenanigans?
Well, anybody, first, thanks for having me. I think this is going to be something great to get the fans of the Southland Conference and just anybody that wants to watch a chance to see what it's about. But Southland Shenanigans comes from, man, when we covered football during the season, man, it just felt like every weekend something crazy happened. So, I would text you, I'd put it on Twitter, hashtag Southland Shenanigans, and it didn't stop during football season. It continued into basketball, and we didn't get too much of a chance for the spring sports, unfortunately. But yeah, Southland Shenanigans, man, anything can happen, good or bad, funny, serious, it's so much going on that Southland Shenanigans, and obviously the alliteration works. But yeah, man, just a fun thing covering a very interesting conference.
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting conference indeed. And I've been at it for 2 years. You a little bit longer. You've had stints, covering Lamar before your current time covering McNeese. Myself, I cover Sam Houston State. But, one thing you're introduced to almost immediately in the Southland Conference is one of the elite food scenes in the country whenever it comes to college athletics. And I figure why not, start us off. There's not any sports going on. We're going to talk some of our favorites, some things that we love about the Southland Conference. First things first, favorite Southland Eats city. Who are you going with? And first off, we have to explain Southland Eats. Southland Eats at Southland Eats on Twitter, a social media movement kind of put together by, I guess, Jason Barfield, Associate AD at Sam Houston State, just tracks all the food and drink happenings around the conference. But David, favorite Southland Eats city in the conference, got a lot of good ones to choose from Texas to Louisiana to Arkansas. Who are you going with?
Before I say which city, we agreed on this one too, is no Houston, no San Antonio, just because
no New Orleans either.
Because obviously those are three incredible food cities, and them being so big, it's like it just wouldn't be fair. They're playing a different game than the other cities that in the conference. So with that being said, though, I got to go with Beaumont. And while I am familiar with Beaumont, having worked there, but it's kind of a mix between a big city, like it's not a huge city, but big enough, but they also have some great local spots. Daddy-O's Burger, love it. Went there after the McNeese Lamar football game last season. Absolutely love their burgers. Floyd's Seafood, it's right there off of I-10. If you're right when you come into town, you see it on the north side of I-10. It's great. And then, you just have the normal places you can go if you want to get a bite to eat. Being in Lake Charles, we don't have a Whataburger right now, so they have that. So it's always good to go grab food there. But Beaumont, it's great. There's some, and listen, there are other, like you're gonna mention one, but we can't forget cities. Hammond has its great places. Thibodeau has its great places. But Beaumont, it's big enough that you have a lot of variety for what you want.
Yeah, me personally, I haven't spent enough time in Beaumont to really capture that full food scene, but I have been to Floyd's, and I will say, whenever it comes to your top-notch seafood places, that's right there at the top of the discussion in the Southland Conference. For me, I'm going to go a little bit northeast. I'm going to go with Northwestern State and Natchitoches, Louisiana. Maybe, a little bit of a unique pick, but I enjoy it because, I went to school at LSU, got my undergrad degree there, and I love getting me some good Louisiana style cooking. And obviously there's a difference in the state. Obviously you go from Nichols down in Thibodeau to Northwestern State up in Natchitoches, and it's two completely different things. And, it was neck and neck for me. I went with Natchitoches because there's a little bit more variety. Obviously the home of the world famous meat pie from Lazy Owns, but also just a ton of good spots, Mamas and Papas, and the downtown Natchitoches strip is kind of what puts it over the top for me, just overlooking the Cane River. It's your stereotypical place where if you get into town and you got 3 or 4 or 5 hours, or you're lucky enough to get in town the night before, it's a really good spot to kill some time.
Yeah, no, honestly, you're right about Natchitoches. It's a very very laid back place, and yeah, I've been there a few times for Southland Conference softball. I went there last year to cover the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Personally, when it comes to Lazions, I love the crawfish pie. Meat pie is good to me, but the crawfish pie, man, I could get two of those and a sweet tea. And last time I was up there, I had to sneak it in because the people at the front were very strict about the food and drink, but I snuck it in somehow. But yeah, no, Natchitoches is definitely a good one. And like you say, the scenic river and everything, it's definitely a nice little spot to go.
Yeah, and you mentioned the crawfish pie. I definitely go crawfish pie over meat pie, but one that you got to check out if you haven't yet. I found it out at this spot. It was in the Woodlands in Texas, in between Houston and Huntsville, called A Bear Specialty Meats. I think they got a few spots in Louisiana, but they have the shrimp pie, and that's one that I highly recommend. I love crawfish, but I'm more of a shrimp guy, and so if you like shrimp, you got to give that one a shot. But before we get off the topic of food scenes and favorite Southland Eats cities, we got to give a little bit of love, I feel like, to UCA, and not necessarily for Conway itself. Conway's a gorgeous place, but for me, I have to kind of do a nod to UCA, because whenever we go, we stay in downtown Little Rock, and if you're going to stay in a city around the Southland and just kind of enjoy a place for a night or two, and get out on the river, have some great food. There's a hot chicken place that I cannot think of the name right now, but just a really fun city to, kind of take in a good night in a big city before you hit up the game the next day.
I agree. When I went up there to cover the UCA McNeese game last fall, stayed in Little Rock, went downtown. I ended up getting some Gus's fried chicken. I think
Gus's, that's the spot right there.
Yeah, I think that was your suggestion to me, or multiple people actually might have. But I remember I got that. Yeah, I did go out for a little bit the night before the game. Luckily, it was like a 4:00 game, I think, so I didn't have to be up crazy early. So you can go out, just enjoy it a little bit. It was a great. I like Little Rock. It was also culturally you can't beat it, because I went and saw the Little Rock 9 Museum. Little Rock Central High School. Beautiful campus, one of the nicest I've seen for a high school in the country. But culturally it's great. Like you said, the food is great. There's another place there that my buddy Gabe, he went to University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, told me about, the Whole Hog Cafe. Just to let you know, it is still a very much partisan to the University of Arkansas there. No matter where UCA is, or Arkansas State, or Pine Bluff, it is very much the University of Arkansas State. But man, Little Rock can't go wrong with it, and even UCA campus beautiful. Conway very nice. All in all,
perfect. It's really Conway's kind of the perfect place for football season. I know it was raining the day that Sam was up there this past season, but you get there and before it started pouring down, like it's just that prototypical fall football weather that you dream of.
You're right. That's how it was when we got there. It was cool, but not too cold. You go in and it's just a nice scene. You got the barbecuing, and I think I might have been there for homecoming. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, it was just a nice scene, and the people were very nice. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, it was a very nice scene.
Yeah, and kind of playing off of that, the nice people up at UCA brings us up to our next topic, and that's our favorite fan base within the conference. Me and you have, I think it's safe to say, gone back and forth with a few different groups of different fan bases, but there have been a few that I've been really impressed with. And if I have to say there's one that stands out to me more than anyone, there's a lot of great fan bases in the Southland Conference, but for me, my favorite, I think, has to be the team you cover, and that's McNeese. From everything from the history, playing at the whole Cowboy Stadium, that's something that Sam Houston State head football coach Casey Keeler mentioned to me, very early on in my time here, whenever, it was coming up on the game this past season. And, he talked about that being one of the historic venues in all of FCS football. And I think it's safe to say it's the most historic one in the Southland without a doubt. But, you just get beyond that. You go there and you're having, tailgates and friendly people all over the grounds. And the thing that I really like too is the passion across the board for all sports. It's something that I saw this past year, and it's honestly something I would love to see a little bit more of from the fans of the school I cover, Sam Houston State, is that consistent presence at games. I mean, we saw last year Sam Houston State's homecoming game against Nichols when they shut out the number 9 team in the country, had, just over 3,000 fans in the stands. Whereas, McNeese, as we both know, they've had some down years as of late, but they're still showing up strong in numbers. And even in basketball, I love that new arena that they have there. And a team that, McNeese obviously went on a big basketball run that we'll probably talk about here in just a little bit, but I was just blown away by the crowd they had for an early season. I think it was like January 2nd basketball game. Wasn't really a ton to be excited about, with McNeese basketball at the time. And I mean, that crowd there was electric.
Yeah, I will say, and I've been, like I said, I've covered Southland Conference sports for about 4 or 5 years now. I will say McNeese probably has the most passionate fans that I've experienced. And I say that because whether the teams are good or bad, I mean, whatever I write, people will respond to me about it. Not just the fans, the players. I did all decade for men's basketball, and I had a player and I had a coach of a dad of another player that emailed me and messaged me saying that, they didn't like it because they were too low or they weren't on it. So, but no, they're very passionate. Like you say, tailgating. I remember when I first got here, I remember like a Thursday night before a Saturday game, I'm like driving out of the sports complex, and I see these, campers set up, and I'm like, man, it's Thursday. That's the type of stuff you normally.
That's what you see that's what you see at LSU. I mean, that's a tradition, and that's a Louisiana thing, and I think we're going to see that carry over too. As Nichols has that football facility that's going to be, that's that pride of that athletics department right now. That new facility over there and those upgrades. I think we're going to see kind of maybe more of that across the Southland, where you see fans showing up for those Louisiana Saturday games on Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, I think so. The toughest thing, as always, in the state of Louisiana is going to be competing with LSU. So, no matter what, I can't really think all of the FCS schools in the state of Louisiana. So except for, I would probably say the SWAC schools, Grambling and Southern, all of the Southland schools, they all just have some type of love for LSU. So if you play at the same time, there's always going to be some type of conflict. But yeah, there's a lot of passion for the school. But yeah, McNeese, they love all the sports. I mean, I go out and cover softball, and I get people that want to know about it. I got, last year I took a day off or 2 days off to go to go to a friend's wedding in Florida. And I just so happened to miss McNeese beat old rival, and we're going to call him ULL. But I missed the game, and I had people that were upset that the story wasn't in the paper. So, I as when it comes to being a journalist, you want somebody to elicit strong emotions, either a love or a hate when they see your content. You don't want them to be kind of, indifferent. And McNeese, whether they love what I write or whether they hate it, they definitely let you know. And that to me means they're a pretty solid, impassioned fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. I think McNeese kind of stands apart in its own category whenever it comes to that passion department, as you just described. But, talking about that passion and the emotions, that these games that we cover evoke brings us to our final favorite of the day before we kind of get into some looking ahead into the 2020-21 academic and athletic calendar year. And, that's the favorite story that you covered this past year. For me, I got to go with the game where Sam Houston State went down to McNeese early on in Southland Conference play. That was a game that was, I think, the epitome of Southland shenanigans.
Yes, absolutely. That game was like I just remember the rain to start the game, and it felt like Sam Houston State was not gonna complete a snap. Like they couldn't
There was
snap.
like 4 or 5 on the first like 2 drives that were
Yeah,
made.
and it just was. I couldn't explain that game if I tried. And then the was it Schmid goes
Yeah,
out.
yeah. So, and that's the thing that made that game and that story so interesting. And I didn't really think about it until I got the news, that Ty Brock, former Sam Houston State quarterback, had transferred to CMU, and I looked back on my post game interview with him from that game. And so, heading into that game, the week before, Eric Schmid, it was his first game as the definitive starting quarterback for Sam Houston State. Him and Ty had been rotating snaps throughout the first few weeks of the season, but first game of Southland Conference play, they say Eric's the guy, hand him the keys to the offense, and they just absolutely obliterate Incarnate Word, put up 45 points on a team that was coming off a conference championship, threw for 531 yards, 5 touchdowns. Everyone's like, finally the magic's back that was missing, since Jeremiah Briscoe had been on campus. Then literally the second drive of that McNeese game the next week breaks his hand, and it just kind of starts a comedy of errors for Sam Houston State in the injury department, where they ended up playing about half the season with all 5 of their scholarship quarterbacks on roster being injured. But getting back to the game, that particular game at McNeese, pouring down rain, Sam Houston State struggling like crazy, and they have to throw Ty Brock in the game, who people didn't really know this at the time, but Ty Brock messed up his ankle really bad the week before against Incarnate Word, and he didn't take a snap in practice all week, didn't really warm up or do anything like that, and then all of a sudden Eric breaks his hand, the second drive of the game, and he's got to go in there, and then all of a sudden he goes in for a drive. He has to run up and get taped again. They have a true freshman in the game for a drive or two, and me and you and the SIDs and everyone upstairs are just like trying to keep track of everything that's happening. And then, Ty gets wrapped up, comes back down. Then he throws a couple of picks in the first half. Sam falls behind 14-7, and then they just rallied. And it's a thing that you saw from that team all year long. The final record might not show it, but they had, I don't know how to describe it. It was just almost like a sense of determination that if there was a chance to win a game, they weren't going to let it slip away. And obviously that happened, especially at UCA later on in the season. But Brock comes out after that rough first half, throws 147 yards in the second half, finishes the game with 3 scores. Defense just absolutely shut it down. I think, they allowed 111 yards in the second half. And that was kind of their statement, where they were like, hey, Sam Houston State might be known for the offense, but we have one of the best defenses in the country. And then Ty Brock, playing on literally one leg, helps lead that 18-play drive in the fourth quarter to put it away in the rain. And it was one of those things where I'd never had seen, or, I didn't see it because I was waiting outside the locker room. I had never heard a locker room reaction for a player like I did whenever Ty Brock walked in there. And let's just say that shout out to my guy Jason Barfield at Bearcat Athletics, because he did some nice video work, some nice video editing to get a version out there for the fans on social media.
Nah, man, that was a good one. That was a great game. Just from a neutral's perspective, obviously, will be kicking themselves for blowing a lead and, losing to a quarterback, like you said, that was on one leg. But that was a good game, though. My favorite story of this last athletic year, I'm going to kind of go broad and then kind of tighten it a little bit, is the McNeese men's basketball team. Their 2019-2020 season was just, it was fascinating. Like, the cliche of a roller coaster season, like, it really rings true. Non-conference play was tough. You play a lot of money games. They actually almost beat Texas at Texas. They were competitive with Wisconsin for about a half. They had some good games, but you get to, and then you start Southland Conference play with, Stephen F. Austin, everybody, the world's favorite. But they give SFA a game, but it was without a 100% Shamarcus Kennedy. He'd been dealing with flu before that, and he just wasn't as effective as normal. Then lose to Sam Houston State. That was a tough one. But then go on a 7-game winning streak, and in the 7-game winning streak, you beat Nichols. Is probably one of the most entertaining games I've seen all season. It was in overtime. Drew Cuxhausen hit 6 straight threes. Just him alone was a great story. But you beat Nichols.
Drew Cuxhausen, you talk about him. I mean, the play of the year, he delivered it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna get to that. So you get the 7-game winning streak. Then I'm thinking, man, they're gonna compete for a conference championship. They're gonna get a top 4 seed. Then 6-game losing streak, and it's like, what is going on? Now they're barely fighting for the final seed to get into the tournament, and you go into the last day. You go into the last day of the season against your rival Lamar, who beat you earlier in the year. And you're beating them handily. They come back. In the last minute of the game, Drew Cuxhausen gets the ball kind of half unguarded on the wing and just puts up a prayer, gets fouled, hits a 4-point play. McNeese ends up winning, which they needed to in order to make the tournament. So, I mean, it was just
and in doing so, helped out Sam Houston State, which right. Even though they didn't get to play in the tournament, that shot, in effect, clinched them that first-round bye. I remember texting you during the timeout of the game, and I was like, McNeese needs to clinch this first-round bye for Sam because they're about to lose at SFA. And then all of a sudden, I see your tweet with the video, and it's just like,
it was incredible.
Southland Shenanigans.
That is Southland Shenanigans to the T. Like, it was incredible, and especially being at Lamar. I mean,
which is an amazing basketball environment.
It is. But
for big time games,
you see the McNeese fans in the background just like going crazy, and then but it's like, other than that, it's just like dead silent. Everybody's just like, what happened? It was incredible. So yeah, just that season was it. I'll say Heath Schroyer and his staff and the team, they'll kick themselves because they could have been better. They probably could have won somewhere around 18 to 20 games. Because they really, really just lost some bad games during the losing streak. But that was a very interesting season. And like I say, even though they lost in the conference tournament to Lamar, just to get in, and the way you get in with that shot is just one of the craziest things I've seen.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about, breakout guys. Drew Cuxhausen's a guy who, in my opinion and in your opinion, probably should have been the newcomer of the year in the Southland Conference this season. One fan base might not be too happy about that, but it is what it is. But kind of going off of that, and the theme of guys to watch, like no one would have thought of Drew Cuxhausen heading into the season as the guy to watch this season, but that's what he turned out really being for McNeese basketball. Obviously you had Shamarcus, but he was right there, a guy that you needed to step up into that role to kind of be able to go on that run and have the season that they had, which brings us up to our next topic, and that is an athlete to watch in this upcoming calendar year. Who are you going with?
Oh, man, this year, if I have to go –
any sport, any team, is there a particular player that you're excited to see this next year?
I am excited to see – actually, I'm going to stay with basketball. I'm going to go with A.J. Lawson. Now, he kind of gets lost a little bit with the basketball team because you have Shamarcus Kennedy putting up these double-doubles with like 3-4 blocks a game. You have Cuxhausen that's putting up threes from like half court. A.J. Lawson was I wouldn't say – he was kind of the engine because like he hurt his ankle pretty badly. With about 7 or 8 games remaining, and he couldn't play like how he wanted to. When he's at his best, he's in that pick and roll, driving to the basket. He gives McNeese another dimension other than just the pounding it inside the sham or the kicking it out to Drew. He can hit the three. He's not like a prolific three-point shooter, but he can hit it if you leave him open. So I'll say if he can stay healthy, he was already averaging about as many points as Drew did last season, about somewhere around 14, 15 points. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be really good for McNeese and can help them go really far next season. What about you?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned AJ Lawson because a guy he immediately makes me think of is one of his former Bryan High School teammates, and that is Sam Houston State, going to be a junior next year, guard Zach Nuttall. And, he's I was just on, Bryan College Station TV this week talking about Zach, and he's a guy who we saw during that game, and I think I even said it to you after that game, where he had a career high against McNeese, had 25 points that game. And that was a game where Chad Bowie went down early, and he was kind of that energy guy for Sam Houston State. At that point in the season, you made a few comments to me about his chippiness on the court, but he went down like 2 or 3 minutes into that game, and Zach just took over. I mean, he finished with 25 points, and I think I turned to you at the end of the night and said that kid's going to be the best player in the Southland Conference next season, and I think he was the only classman on the first team this past year. So I'm going to keep with that prediction. But to give fans a little bit of something that's not just Sam Houston State and McNeese, I'm going to throw out another guy that I've loved to watch these past few seasons. I've gotten a little bit more of a glimpse of him than most Southland fans just because he was hurt throughout a large part of that 2018 season. But that's Central Arkansas quarterback Braylon Smith.
That's a great pick. And, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the future, but I think Central Arkansas will be one of the top teams in the conference again, and it's because of Braylon Smith. He's so impressive as a quarterback. He'll be, to me, probably the top 2-3 quarterback in the conference. Obviously, he had a great year last year. You saw what he could do against Sam Houston State, against a defense that you obviously think very highly of from last season, and you think they're going to be good this coming season. So, yeah, to see him do as well, like to see him do what he did, I saw him in person. You saw him in person. That's a great pick. That's a great pick. I think he's going to be one of the – not just in the Southland Conference. I think he'll be –
the entire FCS. He's going to be a breakout player to watch, I think, across the country. And I saw it early because he gave the Bearcats hell in the 2018 season whenever he ended up having that season-ending injury that made him sit out the rest of the year and kind of didn't let Southland Conference fans see him. Obviously, Chase Forcade was going to be first team last year, but Braylon was second team. And you mentioned the game against Sam Houston State, and I think that's the stereotypical example of why he is my player to watch this year. I mean, his team is down 16-0 at the half, finishes the game with over 400 yards and 4 TDs, leads them to a comeback win that if they don't get, they might not be in the postseason this year. And I mean, finishes the year with over 3,700 yards, over 30 touchdowns. I think even though Chase Forcade was obviously the first team quarterback in the Southland Conference last season, I think from a talent perspective, just from a pure, I guess, playmaking ability at the quarterback position, I don't think there was a player better at that spot than Braylon Smith last year. Even Chase Forcade, as amazing as he was during his career.
I agree. And don't forget, this guy has one of the better receivers in the conference as well.
Absolutely. He tore it up. Joe Hampton? Or who are you thinking of?
No, Luwan Whittingham.
Oh, yeah.
Number 5. Number 5. He's going to be a junior. He's going to be a junior. He's actually – he's from the Houston area. Just looking, he's from Atascocita. Good, one of those programs that's been kind of dominating recently in Houston. But when you have that quarterback receiver combination that you just know, like, hey, don't matter. We can put, he's either going to destroy man coverage or he's going to force the defense to bracket him with a safety. Like it's like what happened with Nichols when Stajon Dixon got healthy again last season. He gave McNeese the worst trouble. So when you have those type of quarterback receiver connections, it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, we may be stuck. The offense might be in a bit of a rut. Hey, I'm going up top to you. Make a play. So, and obviously Braylon Smith can do a little bit with his legs as well. So, no, you're right. That's a great pick. And like I said, I think UCA is going to be something to watch next season.
And an interesting note about Braylon Smith, a Conway, Arkansas kid staying home. He brings them a title at one point in his career.
Be interesting. That'd be
a cool story.
That's fascinating because I'm sure, I wonder how much Conway football, how big Conway High School football is. So to see somebody from the area, that's got to be pretty cool for him.
Absolutely. And, just our last topic of the day, let's finish off this inaugural episode with some bold predictions for this upcoming academic year. Let's heat it up. Let's get the fan bases fired up. Please get at us in our comments on Twitter. I'm at item_Criswell. He's at dberrysports. Let us know how much you hate our bold predictions or anything that we have said so far today. But David, do you want to start us off, or you want me to?
I'll start. Now, some of it, I was telling you earlier about how, the chance of a one-time waiver for basketball is kind of up in the air. I think that could have a little bit of effect on McNeese if this happens. But if everything goes through and the kids can transfer in, I am predicting right now that McNeese men's basketball will win at least the regular season or Southland Conference tournament title. And I say this because McNeese is going to have some of the best guard play in the conference next year. A.J. Lawson comes back. Drew Cuxhausen comes back. Some other guards are going to be coming back on the bench. Miles Hutchison is a point guard. Trey Johnson should be coming back. You've also got some guards that were redshirting last year. So if you can get that size with the Keyshawn Feazell transferred in from Mississippi State, Carlos Rosario coming in from JUCO that put up similar numbers to Shamarcus Kennedy at the junior college level in the same conference, if those things can come together and they can just stay more consistent, obviously have that dip. You can't have the dip like they had last season, but if they can stay consistent, I think A.J. Lawson will get better. I think Drew Cuxhausen will improve on things he needs to improve on. He's going to be a great three-point shooter no matter what. I can see them either staying consistent enough during this regular season to get that title. Obviously, who you have to go through to get that one. But or they could end up being the type of team that I see gets hot in March to win the conference tournament and shock a lot of people. But that's my bold prediction. What's yours?
Hey, I ain't gonna argue with you. I think I know a few people who might, but
we already know.
My bold prediction, and it's gonna come with a caveat because there is a big if on this one. But my bold prediction for the Southland Conference this next school year is this: if Sam Houston State is healthy whenever the 2020 football season is played, they're going to be in the FCS semifinals.
Wait.
Yep.
Ooh, that's a okay. Now
I'm going out on a limb. I made that same prediction on TV this week too.
Now, before you explain it, I want to say that, obviously we don't know when the season will start. We're kind of hoping it'll start in the fall. But in the case of a team like Sam, or every team that you're dealing with injuries, if it gets pushed back a little bit, that might actually help Sam as far as having kids recovered, because instead of, hey, maybe you need to be back for August training camp, maybe it's September, October, I don't know. But why do you think they could go to the FCS semifinals if healthy?
It's two parts, I guess, and offense and defense. The defense, I think, is one of the largest reasons why I think that they can get to that level, why I think that they can win a Southland Conference title. They will be my pick to win it unless anything drastic changes in the next few months. It's just because you look at that defense. I mean, they lose two key seniors at linebacker and Hunter Brown and Royce C. They lose, a DB in the secondary, but they bring back almost everyone else from a defense that led the country in TFLs, third down defense, total defense, rushing defense, and then was in the top 8 in 8 other categories. I mean, we saw it. They absolutely shut down a Nichols team that was a force, beat them without a starting quarterback. They were rotating in an injured Ty Brock, and then basically 2 wide receivers, and were able to beat Nichols just because of how dominant that defense was. Then you go over to the other side of the ball, to the offense, and it's Eric Schmid. The one thing that's been missing the past 2 seasons, since Jeremiah Briscoe was on campus, whenever they went on that 17-1 run in Southland play and went on those deep runs into the FCS playoffs, they haven't had that solidity at quarterback since then. This is their first offseason where they've known, and really, I mean, they've known it since that Incarnate Word game, and their confidence level has never changed. I talked to Coach Keeler about it a few weeks ago, and, we were just talking about the crazy nature of the last season, and he told me, immediately after that Incarnate Word game, we firmly believed that we had one of the top 5 offenses and one of the top 5 defenses in the country. And considering the dismantling they did of UIW that game, it's hard to argue with that. Obviously, injuries played a large role. They're going to have to fill some pieces on the offensive line. Obviously, Nathan Stewart, one of the most prolific receivers in Southland Conference history, is gone. But they bring back a ton of weapons for Eric Schmid to throw to. And I think the biggest thing about it is that Eric brings almost a sense of calmness, I think, in amidst chaos, if that makes sense. I was talking to Keeler. That's one of the things he mentioned about how he's just a gamer. And, he did the same exact thing in high school throughout his career at the Woodlands, led them all the way to the state title game. And I was talking to their high school sports coordinator, Adam Coleman, who does a great job covering all high school sports in the Houston area. And, he talked about that. He talked about how he was never the rah-rah guy. He was never the loudest guy in the locker room. But whenever you're in that huddle in the final few minutes, that your quarterback is someone that you want to have the ball in their hands. So that's why I'm going with Sam Houston State, in a lead offense, in a quarterback that, if healthy, you can fully trust.
I'll say I don't know if I want to necessarily go that far as Final Four, but that's why it's a bold prediction. However, I agree with you. That defense, I remember looking at it before the McNeese game when I was previewing and just seeing them in person. They have a FBS caliber defense.
And you look at their guys, and I mean, on that defensive line, the list goes on and on and on. But I mean, you look at the biggest name, obviously, Trace Mascara, who came in and was newcomer of the year this past year in the Southland, an absolute force, a former all freshman team guy at UTEP, transferred to Sam Houston State because he was wanted to go into criminal justice, and that's one of the best places in the country to go to school for it. Then you look at Joe Wallace, who, even though Trace got newcomer of the year, Big Joe Wallace is a guy that he's just absolutely a force to be reckoned with in the middle. Transferred from Texas Tech. One of his high school teammates and best friends was already on the team down here and was able to get him down to Huntsville. So those 2 pieces are key. Then you got a JUCO guy in Jakari K that came in last year. He had multiple FBS offers, as well as a guy in Javon Leon who came from the Houston area, was, I believe, a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in a 6A district. And he's also a guy that definitely had his chances to be playing at the FBS level.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Sam Houston State's defense is that they can kind of control kind of tempo because they have such big corners. They can play man coverage. So they kind of can take away a lot of zone read, a lot of spread type of stuff. They can control everything, and having such a good defensive line, you can rush with 4 and get to the quarterback. And it allows your backers to kind of do a lot. It allows your DBs to kind of do a lot. You can confuse if you want. You can just lock down, play man, and bring a lot of pressure. There's a lot they can do. So that's what impresses me. So like you said, if Schmid can stay healthy and just perform at a level that, is what he thinks he can, I absolutely, I won't, like I said, it's your bold prediction. So I'm not going to take your bold prediction, but I do think that they will be very, very good next season.
Well, that's all we got for you. Thanks to everyone out there for tuning in. I'm Josh Criswell. I'm the sports editor at the Huntsville Item. He's David Berry, covers McNeese for the American Press in Lake Charles. We're going to be doing this as often as we can. Hopefully we'll be having some live sports soon enough, but until then, we'll be here to kind of, talk and help get you through this. And moving forward, we're planning to hopefully get some of our other favorite people from around the Southland Conference involved.